The author will have 2 minutes for his opening submission.
There. I'm from Minnesota, and as a chamber, and I'd like to reserve my right to use the remaining time to apply to me.
That is your right.
One world, one dream. Beijing 2008. That's the motto of this year's Summer Olympics, but it's certainly not the motto being forecast by Chinese authorities. In 2001, the International Olympic Committee awarded Beijing the honor of holding the Summer Olympics when Chinese officials pledged to allow more freedoms and rights to their people. However, not only has the Chinese government failed to live up to this standard and this promise, it has also failed to live up to the fundamental principles, the fundamental ideals of the Olympic Charter. We all know and are all well aware of the suppressive actions of Chinese officials in dealing with their own citizens in the Tibetan province. However, their atrocities go further than within their own nation. Chinese diplomats have stood by and watched as hundreds of thousands have died in Sudan and Myanmar. In these nations, China holds nearly all of the foreign economic sway and even more of the diplomatic power. Instead of using this sway and power to save countless lives, the Chinese government has stood idly by. The Olympics were founded to place sport at the center of developing a peaceful society to preserve human dignity. Some of you may say that this is a sporting event, and it crosses the line to use it as an international platform for politics. To that I must ask, is there a line? Nearly 1 million people have already been killed. With that many lives lost, I see no line. 28 years ago, our nation led the way in boycotting the Olympics. 63 other nations followed us. And 232 years ago, our nation led the way in developing a new world. We developed a world based on freedom and equality, and today we have the opportunity to continue upholding these beliefs. Today we have the opportunity to share our freedom.
Thank you. Time has elapsed.
The only problem that I have with this is, as I've thought about this more since it was in my first committee, I do not believe that a full boycott of the Olympics would be totally justified. Yes, the Olympics have been, there's been a precedent set for the Olympics to be staged for political events. You can go back to Hitler using the Olympics for supporting his Nazi regime, and then Jesse Owens beating all of the Aryan race. You can go back to the Black Panthers' support when the two men stood on the podium and held their hands up high. I believe that the thing that I believe is we can do this in a different way by, say, boycotting the opening and closing ceremonies and things like that, and also going over there and maybe setting some kind of statement with the performance that our athletes make at these games.
Thank you. The chair will now recognize David Coase to address the floor.
There's a reason that our country was founded and a reason that our government stays running, and that is because we are not afraid to voice our own opinions. If we're truly an advocate for human rights on a global stage, then the fate of maybe 1,000 athletes not being able to compete for 1 year, weigh that against millions of people who are giving their lives every single day under the unfair and oppressive regimes of China. If we are truly against what China is doing, then we need to say so.
Alright, our technical questions. I asked the proposal author when the last time that the United States Boycott Olympics was, and he replied that it was Moscow Olympics, which is true, that's the last time. The history behind the Moscow Olympics was when we boycotted the Moscow Olympics, even though other countries did the same, the LA Olympics, which happened just after, the Soviets boycotted that. The result of boycotting the Moscow Olympics and then boycotting the LA Olympics was to make both countries look childish, because what it comes down to is this is the best diplomatic choice? And do we, as far as diplomacy goes, this is a diplomatic action that says we're not going to talk to you about these problems face to face. We're going to have a symbolic gesture that ultimately is going to turn out childish, just as the Soviet one did. And with the Soviet one, there were other countries who did the same, and it still turned out childish. Also, with the power of China in the coming years, the last thing we want to do, especially economic, the last thing we want to do is to put a symbolic gesture like this, where we aren't talking to them straightforward about what we do and how they can be better, but instead we're just saying that we're not going to talk to you, we're just going to pull out of largely symbolic gesture that won't amount to anything. So Overall, this is not the correct diplomatic stance for a very powerful economic country.
The chair will now recognize.
This is a simple proposal. China promised that they would improve these conditions, and they didn't. Because of this, we should stand by our ideals, and because of this, boycott the Summer Olympics. I yield my hand to the chair.
May I address the opinion? Thank you. Many con speakers have mentioned athletes. I want to mention one specific athlete who has worked really hard this season. It was Kobe Bryant. Yes, in fact, he did lose to the Celtics in the championship game, but whatever. He was injured and he still played. He sacrificed his surgery so he can play in the Summer Olympics. Many athletes do that. They sacrifice day in and day out. Kobe Bryant is sacrificing 50% of the season for next year. He will not be able to play any off-season games and half of his season games. Ladies and gentlemen, people sacrifice a lot to go into these Olympics. Athletes, American citizens, and people in the world. We do not want to look childish, like a fellow delegate has stated before. Because when America looks childish, we think of the world childish. And like we say, America is the greatest country in the world. I don't want to look childish. Thank you.
Chair, Councilman Soto, and Mr. Chambers. Right, I've got a couple of things I'm going to go over here real quick. Yes, the boycott in Moscow was not effective in 1980. However, if we take a look at the Summer Games in Seoul, Seoul, South Korea, when in 1987 Ronald Reagan threatened to boycott the 88 games, unless the regime that was currently in place would introduce democracy, it worked. To address the fact that a boycott wouldn't work, take a look at the Montgomery boycott, bus boycott in the 1960s in the South. It worked perfectly, that hits us close to home. Or take a look at the international boycott of South Africa's rugby athletes when they were in apartheid state. That works, that's an international example of it work. In 1936, the Nuremberg laws were in full force. German troops occupied the Rhineland. Dachau, a work camp that was prominent and eminent in the Holocaust, was already full of prisoners, but the world cheered for athletes in Berlin, and this was used as a huge publicity coup for Hitler and the likes. Athletes do spend their lives trying to get here. A previous delegate said, and I quote, "They've trained day and night for like 15 years." To that I respond, millions of Chinese, millions of Sudanese, and millions of Myanmar have been running for day and night for like 15 years, for their lives. Kobe Bryant, who is a quasi-millionaire, is sacrificing several $1 million so that he can go be at the Olympics. Yet right now, in China, tonight, several million parents are sacrificing a meal so their child can eat. To say that this is the wrong course of action because this is for our athletes and this is proper for America and it's childish of us is certainly not. It's bold and it's the right thing to do.
Thank you, Delegate.